Rain lashed the glass windows of St. Augustine Medical Center, a relentless drizzle blurring the sharp lines of downtown Atlanta. Inside, the hospital pulsed with fluorescent light and the low hum of machines, clipped heels, and murmured conversation. Camilla Owens, 22, and in the final year of her nursing program, stood in line at the blood donation drive, damp from the weather but composed. She hated hospitals, too many memories of her adoptive father's losing battle with cancer. But today was different. This was for a class credit, yes, but also a way to give something back, to help someone she'd never know. That idea comforted her, like lighting a candle in a dark hallway, as she filled out the standard forms, checking the familiar box next to O negative. A sudden burst of activity caught her eye. 2 nurses and a paramedic burst through the ER doors, wheeling in a stretcher at alarming speed. Blood soaked the sheets. An intercom crackled overhead, voices urgent and tense. Trauma Team 20R3. Camilla froze as whispers rippled through the staff near her. Severe internal bleeding. Code red, O dash negative, rare type, The nurse at the intake desk looked up, scanning the forms in front of her. We don't have it on hand, someone said, panicked. We'll lose her. Camilla's hand trembled, but only slightly. That's my blood type, she said, barely louder than the chaos around her. The intake nurse looked at her with something between relief and caution. Are you sure? Camilla nodded. No hesitation. A tall doctor appeared within seconds, his scrubs streaked with water and blood. We need it now. The patient might not survive the hour. If you're willing, we'll prep you immediately. No name, no details, just urgency. Camilla swallowed hard and nodded again. She didn't ask questions. Within minutes, she was lying in a reclined chair, watching the dark red line flow from her arm into a rapidly filling bag. The room smelled of antiseptic and adrenaline. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with something deeper, like a compass needle spinning without a true north. She didn't know why, but this felt different, important, life-shifting. Elsewhere in the hospital, in an operating room bathed in white light, surgeons fought to stabilize the woman. On the table, unconscious, her face pale, her abdomen laced with wounds, she teetered between life and death. A nurse called out as the blood arrived. The transfusion began. Slowly, color crept back into the woman's face. Her vitals steadied. Neither Camilla nor the medical team knew the truth, that this woman, this stranger barely clinging to life, was Angela Moore, Camilla's biological mother, the one she had never met, the one she never even knew to look for. And Camilla's blood quietly, unknowingly, was what saved her. Camilla Owens had built a life on the quiet foundations of survival, ever extravagance, never ease, just enough to keep going. After her adoptive father, Leon, passed away 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer, the fragile world she had known cracked open. Leon had been her anchor, a kind and principled man with calloused hands and soft eyes, who always believed in goodness even when the world offered none. He never raised his voice, always made time for dinner at the table, and tucked her in with stories that he half invented, just to see her laugh. When he died, the silence in their small house became unbearable. Her adoptive mother, Diane, broke under the grief, or maybe she had been breaking long before, and within months she left without a word. No note, no goodbye, just an empty closet and rent unpaid. Camilla was 19, orphaned twice over. Since then, she had scraped her way through life, stitching together tuition payments with tips. From late-night shifts at Marlowe's Diner and the modest scholarships she'd earned through her nursing program, she kept to herself, always polite but never lingering, her smile carefully measured, her eyes carrying something older than her years. Most nights, after studying and work, she returned to a small studio apartment that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old textbooks. There, she wrote. In spiral notebooks, stacked beside her bed, she poured out questions she could never ask out loud. Why did Diane leave? Why didn't Leon ever tell her more about where she came from? Why did she feel like a misplaced piece? In every room she entered, she remembered vividly the only time she ever broached the subject with Leon. She must have been 12. "Why don't I look like you or Mum?" she had asked, tracing the curve of her own nose in the bathroom mirror. Leon had paused, his back stiffening for the briefest moment. Then he knelt beside her, smoothing her hair. "Families aren't always made the same way," he said gently. "What matters is love." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. And now, with Leon gone and Diane somewhere far from reach, the gaps in Camilla's story loomed larger than ever. She feared what those gaps might mean, that she had been left unwanted, that she had been born into a life no one wanted to claim. Every night, her journal caught those fears, pages of uncertain lineage and dreams of belonging. Pages inked with longing for a face that looked like hers or a voice that echoed some part of her own. She didn't expect answers, but she still wrote them into being, hoping they might come. Across the city, in a vastly different corner of existence, Angela Moore's world had unraveled in slow, painful stages. Once a respected nurse with a spotless record, Angela had spent most of her 20s and 30s building a career she believed in until a false accusation of drug theft derailed everything. Someone else had planted the evidence, she'd later learn, but the damage was irreversible. Her license was suspended. Legal battles drained her savings. Her name, once spoken with pride, became a warning in hospital hallways. The shame consumed her, and the pain found its way into her bloodstream in the form of pills. Then something harder. Rock bottom followed jail time, the streets, shelters. She had lost friends, family, even the will to look herself in the mirror, but something in her refused to stay broken. After years of chaos, she had clawed her way back to sobriety. She enrolled in a rehab program in Atlanta, the city she'd once called home. She took classes, showed up to meetings, applied for a job at a halfway clinic. She was still fragile, still patching herself together, but she was trying. She had no idea that the city she'd returned to held a piece of her past she had never dared to search for. The child she'd been forced to give up at 17. The daughter she had only held once. It was at a shelter, in the middle of a counseling session, when the pain hit. A tearing, searing weight in her abdomen that brought her to her knees. Someone called 911. The paramedics didn't know her history. They didn't know her name. Just a woman in her 40s, unconscious and bleeding internally, with no ID and no next of kin. She was rushed into emergency surgery, her body barely holding on. The hospital admitted her under the name Jane Doe, with no stable vitals and no records to trace. She remained under observation in the ICU, monitored closely but left unidentified. Staff waited for a break in the fog, something to tell them who she was or who might come looking for her. But no one came, and down the hall, not yet knowing how her life had already collided with the strangers, Camilla sat in her uniform, watching her blood flow into a bag. She had no idea she was tethered by history to the woman fighting for her life, just doors away. Not yet. 2 days after donating blood, Camilla was cleaning tables at the diner when her phone buzzed. The hospital's number flashed across the screen. She stepped into the alley behind the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron as she answered. "Ms. Owens," a calm, professional voice asked. "This is Dr. Ramirez from St. Augustine Medical. There's something you need to know. Can you come in today?" Her heart skipped. Had something gone wrong with her blood? A bad screen? Contamination? Her thoughts spiraled. She changed out of her uniform, caught the next bus, and arrived under overcast skies that mirrored the dull ache rising in her chest. Inside the hospital, she was led through a maze of polished corridors, sterile air, and faint echoes of beeping monitors until she reached a quiet corner of the recovery ward. Dr. Ramirez met her there, eyes serious but kind. "Camila, the woman you donated blood for," she pulled through. "She woke up this morning and asked to see you." Camila blinked. "Me? Why?" she insisted. Said it was important. Her first instinct was to say no. She had fulfilled her part. Whatever this was, gratitude, awkward emotion, it felt like too much. But something made her nod. The recovery room was dim, curtains drawn to soften the light. Machines hummed softly. Around the bed, Angela Moore looked fragile, her face pale but her eyes sharp as they locked onto Camila's. There was a strange silence, thick with something neither of them could name. Camila opened her mouth to speak, but Angela beat her to it. Her voice cracked. "Your name, ... Camila." Camila hesitated. "Yes." "How do you know that?" Angela's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her hands trembling where they gripped the sheets. "You're my daughter." Camila didn't move, her feet rooted to the tile floor, her chest hollowed. "What?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Angela reached for her, weakly. "I'm your mother. I gave birth to you when I was 23. I was in a bad place, addicted, alone. My family forced me to give you up. I didn't want to. I fought to get clean so I could come back for you. But when I did, the records were sealed. I couldn't find you." Camila felt like she was floating outside her body, the walls bending inward. "Why now?" she asked, stunned, angry, unsure of everything. Angela sniffled. "When I woke up, I felt it. I can't explain it. I asked for the name of the donor. I just needed to know. And when they told me, Camila Owens, I just knew. It was too much, too sudden." Camila shook her head slowly, her vision blurred with confusion and disbelief. All her life, she had wondered about the silence, the gaps in her story, and now, with one whispered sentence, a stranger was trying to fill them. She couldn't process it, couldn't breathe around it. "No," she said under her breath. "No, this can't be." Angela reached out again. "I've dreamed of this moment for years. I know I have no right to ask anything of you." But Camila stepped back, her arms folded like armor. "I don't know what this is," she muttered. "I don't know you." Then she turned and walked out, her legs numb, her heart roaring. In her ears, the door clicked shut behind her, sealing the room and the truth inside. Camila didn't go back to the hospital. She couldn't. Every time her phone buzzed or she passed a billboard with the St. Augustine logo, something twisted inside her chest. In the days after the encounter, she walked through her life like a ghost, smiling for customers at the diner, nodding through lectures at school, but inside, unraveling. She barely ate. She barely slept. Her journal pages became frantic, filled with looping questions she couldn't escape. Why now? Why didn't anyone tell me? What if she's lying? What if she's not? What does that make me? The woman then looked at her like she'd seen a miracle. But Camila didn't feel like a miracle. She felt like a mistake. By the fourth day, the pressure cracked her resolve. She caught a train across town to the little bungalow where Marcia, her late father, Leon's older sister, still lived. Marcia had always been kind, always baked something when Camila visited, but Camila hadn't gone there in over a year. This time, there were no pleasantries. "I need to ask you something," she said the moment Marcia opened the door. "And I need you to tell me the truth." Marcia stepped aside without hesitation. They sat at the kitchen table, a forgotten mug of tea steaming between them. Camila's voice trembled. "Was I adopted?" Marcia's eyes welled up, and that was answer enough. Still, she nodded. "Yes, Leon adopted you when you were a baby. He didn't talk much about the details, but you were just a few weeks old when you came home. And he loved you more than anything in this world. Don't you ever doubt that." But Camila wasn't ready for comfort. Her fists clenched. "Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked him once, and he lied to my face. Marsha's expression softened into sadness. He thought the truth would break you. You'd already lost so much. He wanted you to feel safe, wanted you to believe you were chosen, not abandoned. The words hit like a blade. Camila stood abruptly, tears brimming. But I was abandoned. Her voice cracked. And now some stranger in a hospital bed says she's my mother, and I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know who I am. She left without finishing her tea, stumbling into the street as the sky opened with rain. That night, for the first time in years, Camila let herself cry. Not the quiet, contained tears she allowed when no one was watching, but a deep, ugly sobbing that shook her whole body. She cried for Leon, for the life she thought she had, for every version of herself that had existed in between. She cried because she no longer knew where the truth ended and the lies began. A few days later, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, the handwriting was shaky but careful. Camila, it began, I know you don't owe me anything, but I need you to know I'm not the same person I was. I've fought hard to be better. I've lived every day wondering if you were okay. I wasn't ready back then, but I'm trying to be ready now. Please, just let me try. Love, Angela. Camila read the letter twice, then tucked it in the back of her journal. She didn't respond. Weeks passed. Camila tried to focus on school, but the questions kept tugging. Late at night, she sometimes found herself scrolling through articles about addiction recovery, about sealed adoption records, about Angela Moore, once a promising trauma nurse, now barely a ghost on paper. Then one cold afternoon, while dropping off a donation box at a local shelter for a community service project, she saw her Angela. She was behind the counter at a soup kitchen, wearing a stained apron, handing bowls of soup to people with hollow eyes and shivering hands. Her hair was tied back, her face pale and thin, but she smiled with real warmth at every person who came forward. She looked tired, but she looked alive. Camila froze in the doorway. She watched for a long minute, heart in her throat. Then, before Angela could turn and see her, Camila slipped back outside and walked away in the falling dusk. Emotions clashing inside her like thunder. Resentment, guilt, curiosity, longing. 2 days later, the news hit her like a punch to the stomach. She got a call from the shelter staff. Angela had been attacked outside the facility late at night. No motive, just random cruelty. They found her unconscious. Again, she was taken to St. Augustine. Camila didn't think. She went. The hospital smelled the same, looked the same, but she didn't feel the same as she had weeks ago. At the nurse's station, she gave her name, unsure if she even had the right to be there. One nurse recognized her. She smiled softly. She's stable now, she said gently. You should know. She kept saying, please tell Camila I'm sorry, over and over, even before she was fully awake. Just those words, like she needed to say them more than anything else. Camila stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the closed door to Angela's room. Her hands trembled at her sides. She wasn't sure what she would say, or even if she could say anything. But this time, she didn't walk away. Camila stepped into the hospital room like she was crossing a threshold she couldn't return from. The air was still, heavy with antiseptic and unspoken words. Angela lay propped up in bed, her face marked with bruises from the assault, one eye still swollen, but her expression softened the moment she saw her daughter. Camila stood frozen, her breath caught somewhere between her ribs and her throat. Angela's voice, hoarse but steady, broke the silence. You came. Camila nodded, barely. She didn't trust her voice yet. Angela shifted, wincing. I thought maybe I'd pushed you away for good. She didn't try to explain right away. She just looked at Camila with eyes so full of pain and hope it made Camila ache. There's more you need to know, Angela said quietly. Not because I want you to forgive me, but because you deserve the whole truth. Camilla sat in the chair beside the bed, hands clenched in her lap. She nodded once. Angela's voice was raw, unraveling in pieces. I was 17 when I got pregnant. My family strict religious, they were ashamed. They told me I'd ruined my life. The father, he wasn't someone I loved. He was someone I survived. I ran from him, from everything. I thought if I kept you, if I raised you, I could fix what was broken. And I tried. God, I tried. Her eyes glazed with memory. But I was young, terrified, and I was already spiraling. I started using again. I couldn't feed you, couldn't keep the lights on. One night, I left you with a neighbor and checked into a shelter, thinking I'd come back stronger. But when I did, you were gone. The state took you. Camilla stared, at her lips trembling. So you gave me up, she whispered. Angela shook her head quickly. No, I never signed anything. I thought I had time. I thought I could fight. But by the time I found where they placed you, it was too late. You'd already been adopted by the Owenses. They sealed the records. I tried everything, petitions, meetings. I even got arrested once for breaking into a social services office to look for your file. She gave a bitter, broken laugh. Spent a night in jail with nothing but your name written on the inside of my sleeve. Her voice cracked as she leaned forward, eyes locked on Camilla. I never stopped looking. Not once. I would have taken you back in a second. I would have done anything to hold you again. But the system, it's not built for people like me. And I didn't have anyone left. Just your name. Just the idea of you. Camilla's hands trembled as the weight of everything she'd never known sank into her chest like a stone. All this time, she whispered, voice breaking, I thought no one wanted me, that I was a mistake, that I was left. Tears streamed down her cheeks, hot and sudden, washing away years of guarded silence. I would write about it every night in my journal. I thought if I ever found the truth, it would make things worse. But this, her voice cracked, you wanted me. Angela nodded slowly, her own tears slipping down her bruised face. So much, it broke me. I don't have anything to offer you, Camilla. No house, no money, no promises. Just the truth and love. That's all I ever had left. Camilla leaned forward slowly, reaching across the sterile space between them. Her arms wrapped round Angela with a trembling kind of desperation, and Angela clutched her back like she would never let go again. They stayed like that for a long time, silent, weeping, years of loss and longing collapsing into the warmth of their first real embrace. Nothing was solved. Nothing was perfect. But for the first time in both their lives, something was finally whole. Camilla didn't move in with Angela not because she didn't care, but because she needed space to heal on her own terms. Trust wasn't rebuilt overnight, but it began, slowly, in the quiet moments between visits. Every Sunday, she stopped by the small group home where Angela now stayed as part of a structured work rehab program. Camilla had helped get her in, sitting across from the directors of the halfway clinic and telling them, with steady conviction, that Angela deserved a second chance. She'd seen the effort, the change. Angela didn't waste it. She worked the kitchen shift, attended recovery meetings, and showed up every day with a grit that Camilla had never witnessed in anyone before. At first, their conversations were awkward, heavy with years they hadn't shared. But in time, they found a rhythm, meals together, walks through the neighborhood, even laughter. Camilla started bringing her textbooks, and sometimes they studied side by side in the community library. She began to talk more, too, with her therapist. She finally cracked open the vault she'd kept locked for years. She talked about the nights she journaled just to feel less invisible, about Leon and how he gave her a kind of safety that always came with a shadow, about Diane and the way she disappeared when Camilla needed her most, and about love, the way she'd confused being chosen with being worthy. For the first time, she said it out loud. I thought if someone picked me, it meant I mattered. The healing didn't come all at once, but piece by piece, Camila began to understand that her story hadn't started the day she was adopted. It had started long before, in a hospital room, in the arms of a scared young woman who had lost everything and never stopped looking. Months later, Angela stood quietly in the back row of the auditorium as Camila crossed the stage in her crisp, white nursing uniform. She clapped, tears in her eyes, as Camila accepted her diploma, her name echoing through the hall. Afterward, outside beneath the soft gold light of late afternoon, Angela reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. It was small, edges frayed, colors faded, but it was unmistakable. A young Angela, eyes swollen from labor, but glowing with love, cradling a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket. "They told me I had to give you up," she said, voice tight with emotion, "but I never let go." Camila stared at the photo, her breath catching. She held it with both hands, as if it might vanish if she blinked too hard. Slowly, she looked up, eyes meeting Angela's. "I know now," she said, voice steady. And in that quiet exchange, no grand speeches, no dramatic music, something shifted. They didn't need to erase the past. They were building something new, not perfect, but real. And finally, whole. Months later, on a warm spring morning touched with quiet wind, Camila stood alone in front of Leon Owen's grave. The cemetery was peaceful, speckled with early blossoms and the soft rustle of trees overhead. She knelt slowly, pressing a single white lily into the grass beside his headstone. Her fingers lingered on the name carved in stone, the man who had taught her how to tie her shoes, how to ride a bike, how to show up with quiet strength. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "You raised me with love. You were my real dad. You always will be. But now I know the whole story, and I'm ready to heal." She stayed there for a moment, letting the silence hold her. A few yards away, Angela stood beneath the shade of an old oak tree, hands clasped in front of her, watching but not approaching. She didn't need to be part of that moment. It belonged to Camila and Leon. She understood that now. When Camila rose, she turned and saw her mother waiting. Their eyes met not with hesitation, but with understanding. No more secrets, no more silence, just two women, bound by blood and years of longing, learning how to love each other in the after. Camila walked toward Angela, step by steady step, and when she reached her, they didn't speak. They didn't need to. Side by side, they began to walk away from the grave, away from the past that had once broken them, and toward whatever life they would build now. Not as strangers, not as ghosts, but as mother and daughter, two broken hearts, stitched back together, fade out.